last night, and so going over Marcus Garvey, Elijah Muhammad, and my father, Dr. York. And the first person I want to deal with is Marcus Garvey, who was born in 1887 to 1940. And there's a lot of things, we deal with the UNIA, and we talk about it and everything. He was the first to deal with the red, black, and green. So when you deal with RBG, that is a person you need to point at, not so much the dead prez or what's going on right now, the SETIs and whatnot. You need to deal with Garvey immediately. He started that first, because his thing was anytime you saw red, black, and green, that's a philosophy because of what we've been through. That was a plight of what blacks had been through all over the world. Because UNIA was not just in America. UNIA had branches in Cuba, Panama, Costa Rica, Ecuador, Venezuela, Ghana, Sierra Leone, Liberia, Namibia, and South Africa. This is a worldwide movement that had 15 million Africans ready. You got to understand that, man. And I didn't when I went to school, I never heard of Marcus Garvey. And we have to realize as well, this oppressor is the authority over the educational system. So when he wants to wipe out somebody, they can do that. I learned even when I learned about Malcolm X. Malcolm X was a pimp. I was my fifth grade teacher told me that Malcolm X was a pimp. Don't even know about him. Read about Dr. King and I Have a Dream. I was told that to my face. So the authorities over the educational system know what to teach our people about our authorities, and do realize that he was for informing his own people because he was a publisher. Before he came to America, he was a publisher, and that was his job from creating the Negro World newspaper. And these are things that we need to know, going back to RBG again, that anytime you deal with that, he was the first to deal with the plight of the African in that worldwide sense. It wasn't just one specific small group. It's time to branch off. You got to realize this was a time, I'm dealing with people where we were in a time period where there is no social network. See, we have social networking, so if I want to call out for class, I could just make a status and people get on it, and there you go. Or if I want to let people know what I'm doing, if I got a DVD come out, I'll let you know about it, and that's fine. This is a time period where there was no TV. I'm dealing with Marcus just first off, no TV, just major radio maybe, but he went out, just to think about the magnitude of what he did without real strong media coverage. Just sit back and think about that for a second. Without any real strong media coverage, this man organized over 20 million or 15 million Africans. I probably was 20 million. I might be minimizing the number, but the fact that he did that without any real coverage is divine. And they want us to forget these facts. They want us to forget these facts because if you start studying this and you start realizing what he did and how many of us he organized, it's hard now to get that many people. It's very difficult because of what we've been through from his time period, from when it was first established in the late 1910s and the 1920s. It's very hard because of what we've been through from that time period. That's over almost a century ago. But what I want to do is I want to write. I'm coming from The Philosophy and Opinions of Marcus Garvey. It was a very important book that I think that everyone should go out and get. But I'm going to read from that at least two of his philosophies for us as a people. And this is from page 52. And I'm just going to read from it. It's short, but I'm going to read from this. It's called The True Solution of the Negro Problem. This is from his writing in 1922. As far as the Negroes are concerned in America, we have the problem of lynching, peonage, and disenfranchisement. In the West Indies, South, and Central America, we have the problem of peonage, serfdom, industrial, and political governmental inequality. In Africa, we have not only peonage and serfdom, but outright slavery, racial exploitation, and alien political monopoly. We cannot allow a continuation of these crimes against our race. As 400 million men, women, and children worthy of the existence given us by the divine creator, we are determined to solve our own problems by redeeming our motherland Africa from the hands of alien exploiters and found there a government, a nation of our own, strong enough to lend protection to the members of our race scattered all over the world, and to compel the respect of the nations and race of the earth. Do they lynch Englishmen, Frenchmen, Germans, or Japanese? No. And why? Because these people are represented by great governments, mighty nations and empires, strongly organized, yes, and ever ready to shed the last drop of blood and spend the last penny in the national treasury to protect the honor and integrity of a citizen outraged everywhere or anywhere. Until the Negro reaches this point of national independence, all he does as a race will count for naught, because the prejudice that will stand out against him, even with his ballot in his hand, with his industrial progress to show, will be of such an overwhelming nature as to perpetuate mob violence and mob rule, from which he will suffer, and which he will not be able to stop with his industrial wealth and with his ballot. You may argue that he can use his industrial wealth and his ballot to force the government to recognize him, but he must understand that the government is the people, that the majority of the people dictate the policy of governments. And if the majority are against a measure, a thing, or a race, then the government is impotent to protect that measure, thing, or race. If the Negro were to live in this Western Hemisphere for another 500 years, he would still be outnumbered by another race who are prejudiced against him. He cannot resort to the government for protection, for government will be in the hands of the majority of the people who are prejudiced against him. Hence, for the Negro to depend on the ballot and his industrial progress alone will be hopeless, as it does not help him. When he is lynched, burned, Jim Crowed, or segregated, the future of the Negro, therefore, outside of Africa, spells ruin and disaster. And just going into, this is on page 66. This is his philosophy on the white race. We desire harmony and unity today more than ever, because it is only through the bringing together of the 400 million Negroes into one mighty bond that we can successfully pilot our way through the avenues of opposition and the oceans of difficulties that seem to confront us. When it is considered that the great white race is making a Herculean struggle to become the only surviving race of the centuries, and when it is further considered that the great yellow race under the leadership of Japan is making a like struggle, then more than ever, the seriousness of the situation can be realized as far as our race is concerned. If we sit supinely by and allow the great white race to lift itself in numbers and in power, it will mean that in another 500 years, this full-grown race of white men will in turn exterminate the weaker race of black men for the purpose of finding enough room on his limited mundane sphere to accommodate that race, which will have numerically multiplied itself into many billions. This is the danger point. What will become of the Negro in another 500 years if he does not organize now to develop and protect himself? The answer is that he will be exterminated for the purpose of making room for the other races that will be strong enough to hold their own against the opposition of all and sundry. And that's just two of his philosophies. And this is the last I'm going to read, is called Self-Reliance and Respect. The Universal Negro Improvement Association teaches our race self-help and self-reliance, not only in one essential, but in all those things that contribute to human happiness and well-being. The disposition of the many to depend upon the other races for kindly and sympathetic consideration of their needs without making the effort to do for themselves has been the race's standing disgrace, by which we have been judged and through which we have created the strongest prejudice against ourselves. There is no force like success, and that is why the individual makes all effort to surround himself throughout life with the evidence of it. As of the individual, so should it be of the race and nation. The glittering success of Rockefeller makes him a power in the American nation. The success of Henry Ford suggests him as an object of universal respect, but no one knows and cares about the bum or hobo who is Rockefeller's or Ford's neighbor. So also is the world attracted by the glittering success of races and nations, and pays absolutely no attention to the bum or hobo race that lingers by the wayside. The Negro must be up and doing if he will break down the prejudice of the rest of the world. Prayer alone is not going to improve our condition, nor the policy of watchful waiting. We must strike out for ourselves in the course of material achievement, and by our own effort and energy present to the world these forces by which the progress of man is judged. And I just read just 3 of his philosophies, or the philosophies from the book Philosophy and Opinions of Marcus Garvey. I don't think that any of that, some wordage was outdated, but none of that philosophy is outdated because we're going through it right now. And until we start to do for self and start to take control of the African race all across this world, then we will be in trouble in terms of extermination and in terms of that, in terms of genocide, because we're at the tipping point of genocide right now, because you have eugenics still going on, you have homosexuality going on, and you have the food and all these things going on, germ warfare and physical warfare. These are things that we face. Do realize that we're at war, that the Ma'afa never ended, and we have to accept that, but we have to put up some form of a fight against it. That's the reality. I'm gonna slip into the part of Elijah Muhammad. One of the things that a lot of people don't know, of course, he was born 1892, but his death it varies, because the date was from 1973 or 1975. It's ridiculous. You go on Nation of Islam's website, they'll say 1975, but you go on other websites, they'll say 1973. That's kind of crazy. Brother was born in Sandersville, Georgia, and people have to realize that this man was only 3rd grade educated. He ended school in the 3rd grade. The fact that he made Malcolm X and made Farrakhan and these people with a 3rd education, not just them, but you had doctors and lawyers and scientists and engineers who was part of the Nation of Islam, and that's not even being taken into consideration of the power. He was the most powerful black man in America for a period of time. He believed in doing for self as well. Regardless of whether you agree with his religious philosophy, from black Muslim to whatever, that makes no difference, because Garvey was a Christian. But it doesn't make a difference because of what they were trying to do for our people. You have to realize that to say the white man's a devil to his face and in publications is a very dangerous thing. But at the end of the day, this is something that he believed in. This was reality and what he was facing. He was a very small man, but he spoke very big and powerful words. He started in 1934. He started his own publication of the Final Call, and that was started by Elijah Muhammad. Muhammad Speaks started by Malcolm X, but he started the Final Call back in 1934. Do realize, as I described earlier with Marcus Garvey, when he started the Negro World, that's media coverage. whether it's a newspaper or not. It may not be Facebook or CNN, but it's our own media coverage. The final call is black media coverage. People may look at that and say to themselves, oh, that's some Muslim stuff, I ain't going to buy that. But you're basically spitting on black media coverage when you do that. That's why, me, every now and then when I get a chance to get it, I get it. Because I want to know what's going on from our perspective. It may be a Muslim, but at the same time, it's a black perspective. And people have to look at the fact that Elijah Muhammad organized millions of people, millions of black people all over the world. There's Nation of Islam members that stretched not just in Chicago where it started, all over the country, all over the world. And people would like to erase that fact of Elijah and try to only highlight the underage girls. None of that stuff, to me, is very irrelevant. In my perspective, it's very relevant to what he was trying to do. And I wanted to read from Message to the Black Man. I'm only going to read two, but I want to read these two that was very important to me from what I read when I was younger. And this is on page 173. This is called the Economic Blueprint. The black man in America faces a serious economic problem today, and the white race's Christianity cannot solve it. You, the so-called American Negro, with the help of Allah, can solve your own problem. The truth must be recognized by the black man. He himself has assisted greatly in creating the serious problem of unemployment, insecurity, and lack. Before the black man can begin to gain economic security, he must be awakened from the dead and gain knowledge, understanding, and wisdom which will enable him to follow my teachings. Islam and only Islam will point the way out of the entanglement of want in the midst of plenty for the followers of Islam, the true religion of the black nation. Know thyself and be yourself. Islam makes a true brother to brother. If this be true, how can a believer be a true brother to another believer and boycott his brother and support the enemy? The believers in truth, Islam, must stop looking up to the white race for justice and take the following steps to correct this problem. Acknowledge and recognize that you are a member of the Creator's nation and act accordingly. This action in the name of Allah requires you as a Muslim to set an example for the laws found, your brothers in the wilderness of North America. This requires action and deeds, not words and lip service. The following blueprint shows the way. Number 1, recognize the necessity for unity in group operations. Pool your resources, physically as well as financially. Stop wanting criticisms of everything that is black owned and black operated. Keep in mind jealousy destroys from within. 5, observe the operations of the white race. He is successful. He makes no excuses for his failures. He works hard in a collective manner. You do the same. If there are 6 or 8 Muslims with knowledge and experience of the grocery business, pool your knowledge, open a grocery store, and you work collectively and harmoniously. Allah will bless you with success. If there are those with knowledge of dressmaking, merchandising, trades, maintenance, pool, and such knowledge, do not be ashamed to seek guidance and instructions from the brother or sister who has more experience, education, and training than you have had. Accept his or her assistance. The white race spends his money with his own, which is natural. You too must do this. Help to make jobs for your own kind. Take a lesson from the Chinese and Japanese and go give employment and assistance to your own kind. When they are in need, this is the first law of nature. Defend and support your own kind. Be true Muslims. Do this. Because the so-called American Negro has been deceived and misled, he has become a victim of deception. He is today in the worst economic condition of North America. Unemployment is mounting and he feels it most. He assisted in reducing himself to his present insecure economic condition. You The black men are the only members of the human race that deliberately walk past the place of business of one of your own kind, a black man, and spend your dollars with your natural enemy. The so-called American Negro has never in the history of America been known to boycott or criticize the white man as he does his own kind. He thus shows love for his enemy and hatred for his own kind. A true Muslim would never boycott the place or business of his fellow Muslim or black brother. A true Muslim is proud of the success of the black sister and brothers. He recognizes that their success is his own success. He recognizes the law of Islam. If one brother has a bowl of soup, you have half of that soup. That's just one. And I'll go into the second one. America is falling, her doom is sealed. I compare the fall of America with the fall of ancient Babylon. Her wickedness, sins is the same as history shows of ancient Babylon. Babylon is suddenly fallen and destroyed. How for her? Take balm for her pains, is so she may be healed. Jeremiah chapter 51, verse 81. What were the sins of ancient Babylon? According to history, she was rich, she was proud, and her riches increased her corruption. She had every merchandise that the nations wanted or demanded. Her ships carried her merchandise to the ports of every nation. She was a drunkard. Wine and strong drinks were in her daily practice. She was filled with adultery and murder. She persecuted and killed the people of God. She killed the saints and prophets of Allah. Hate and filthiness, gambling, sports of every evil as you can practice in America were practiced in Babylon. Only America is modern and much worse. Ancient Babylon was destroyed by her neighboring nations. I warn you to let their destruction serve as a warning for America. This people has gone to the limit in doing evil as God dealt with ancient Babylon. So will he deal with the modern Babylon, America, as God says. Son of man, when the land people sinneth against me by trespassing grievously, then will I stretch out mine hand upon it, and will break the staff of bread thereof, and will send famine upon it, and will cut off man and beast from it. Ezekiel chapter 14, verse 13. We see with our own eyes, but the wicked Americans are too proud to confess that they see the bread of America gradually being cut off. Take a look into the Southwest and Middle West. See the hand of Allah at work against modern Babylon to break the whole staff of her bread for her evils done against his people. Texas and Kansas were once two of the nation's proudest states. Kansas known for its wheat, and Texas for its cattle, cotton, corn, and many other vegetables and fruits. They are today in the grip of a drought. Continuous raging storms, their riverbeds lie bare, their fish stinking on the banks in dry, parched mud. When the rain comes, it brings very little relief and does more damage than good. Snow comes, it brings not joy but death and destruction. After the snow comes more dust storms. With the rain come storms, very large storms. America has not seen the large hailstorms. She will see hailstorms the size of small blocks of ice breaking down crops, trees, and roof of homes, killing cattle and fowl. Behind this terrible earthquake, the people frightened, killed, and much sickness, and death will be widespread. You are getting a token of it now. On the outside, a threat of an atomic war between the nations of the earth, yet you have your eyes closed at the manifest judgment of Allah going on in your midst to bring this country to naught. Allah has found his people, the so-called Negro, and is angry with the slave master for the evil done by them to his people, the so-called Negro. Allah is going to repay them accordingly for their doings. My poor people who have turned to their own God and religion, Allah, are being tracked down and watched as though they are about to rob a bank. This is done to try to put fear in them so that they might stay away from their Allah and true religion, Islam, as the devil knows their salvation and defense. They, the devil, watch the steps of the religious, the Negroes, and seek to slay them. Psalm chapter 37, verse 32. The so-called Negroes live under the very shadow of death in America. There is no justice for them in the courts of the slave masters. Why should not America be chastised for their evils done to the so-called Negroes? If God destroyed ancient Babylon for their mockery made of the sacred vessels taken from the temple in Jerusalem, what do you think Allah should do for America's mockery of the so-called Negroes? That she took from their native land and people and filled them with wine and whiskey. Now she, America, puts on a show of temptation with their women, white women, in newspapers, magazines, in the streets, half nude and posing in the so-called Negroes' faces in the most indecent manner that is known to mankind, to trick them, so-called Negroes, to death and hell along with them. Be wise, my people, and shut your eyes to them. Do not look at them in such an indecent way. Clean your homes of white people, pictures, put your own on the walls. The only so-called Negro pictures you will see in their homes are only they have lynched, one they want to kill, or one who has betrayed his own people for them. America is falling. She is a habitation of devils and every uncleanness and hateful people of the righteous. Forsake her and fly to your own before it is too late. And I just read to you all two excerpts or two theses or essays from Message to the Black Man in America. And I wanted to, of course, I'm going right into my father, Dr. York, but that's just, him breaking down how America is falling, economically, physically, in all ways, even spiritually, because Christianity has fallen. The spell has been broken. So Christianity itself, there's a lot of blacks in America that just they don't believe in that anymore, but a lot of them have no direction. And you have to give, us as Africans in America, you have to give them something. You have to, first off, we have to accept who the enemy is. That's the first step. And then also recognize who we are as a people. It's the whole point of my father is who you are and who you are not. You are not naturally an enemy of your own. The enemy, the true enemy, the oppressor, is the European, the human beast, or what you want to call the white man. That's the reality. And just going into, my father born 1945 to present, he's serving this, serving a situation that is he should not be in. 135 years in prison for doing absolutely nothing but helping his people. People don't know the movements that he started from, starting from just an abandoned building, teaching in abandoned buildings in Brooklyn, Coney Island, to starting the Ansar Allah community in Brooklyn, and these Ansar Allah communities all over the world, all over the United States, all over the world. You name it, we were there. And that needs to be known of what he did. He practiced group economics. And I just mentioned to you the two others, great leaders from Marcus Garvey and Elijah Muhammad, that practiced group economics. They preached group economics. They lived group economics. And my father lived group economics until his situation he's dealing with right now. The whole point of it is to invest in self. The next word for is susu, but it's to invest completely in self. His thing was, I'm not gonna deal with what's going on in terms of I'm not gonna argue with y'all forever. I'm not gonna sit here and argue with my own people about the name of Allah, Hebrew Israelite this and Muslim that, Christian that. I'm just gonna create my own. And you're either going to walk with me or you're not. And more than likely, they didn't. So he got people of like mind to go from Brooklyn to upstate, which is Mount Zion, You know, he generated millions and millions of dollars. My father was a very wealthy man for a very long time from just investing, just starting from investing in self, you know, and going from Mount Zion, as you know, the Catskills to what we had in Eatonton, Georgia, on the land of Tamaray, Egypt of the West. He practiced group economics to a T. The whole thing was, look, you know, F what they doing, we finna do for self completely. And what we did on that land was when we went out, you know, we fought for the women and children. We made money for the women and children. This was daily. You know, you got brothers that they can't even fight for themselves, and we fought for our own every single day that we lived. You know, his legacy really can't even be described. My father's Dr. York legacy can't even be summated. You really can't put it out there. You can say 500 books and, you know, taught over 1,000 different lectures since the early 70s and whatnot, but it really can't even be summated and can't even be, you know, you can't even put out a subtotal or put out a thesis or a paragraph, even a book about him to really describe exactly what he means to us as a people. People would like to hide that fact. People would like to character assassinate him to turn him into a pedophile, which he is not. And that is the problem, is that we are now seeing our authorities from the eyes of the European, the eyes of the oppressor. That's one of the main things that has to change, is that's part of the spell, is that I see my own people as a detriment and not see them as my family. That's the biggest thing that we have to stop doing, is that I highlighted 3, from my perspective, the greatest black leaders that we ever had, because we realize the authorities are trying to erase their memory from our memory. And if they can do that, to me, it's really our own fault, because we didn't do enough to instill in our people what they mean to us and what they've done for our people since we've been here in America. And then this branches all over the world. You really can't, again, with these 3 brothers that I mentioned, you really can't put in terms of whatever. You could write a whole paragraph about them. You could read a whole biography about them. There's no real way you can really highlight what they mean to us as a people. You know, and then going into my father, Dr. York, there's really, you know, it's just the impact that he had on so many different people's lives is, you know, it's divine. The thing is, his thing was, look, you know, it's fine, you want to go get you a job, but try to create something for yourself and your family so that you can have a legacy to leave, not what the Bible says, but for what you created. The book of life is something that starts when you get up in the morning, and you create that for your family to see. That's the bottom line. We can't be stuck in the oppressor's book to define to us, our people, who other people are. Because, again, the image of God, which is one of the main things that he has been stressing for years, you have to erase the image of God as a white hippie somewhere. That is ridiculous, and that's insane. And not just that, but to say he or she or God has no face or no color, when we can go throughout the scriptures and it describes, you know, the recorded evidence of gods walking the planet, walking Ethiopia, years and years before even Egypt was even established. We have to accept that. And when you're accepting that, you're accepting truth. You're not accepting a lie or a fabrication or an ideology or a doctrine. You're accepting fact. And when you accept fact, that puts you above everyone else who is stuck in the oppressor's mindset and their religion. Okay? And we have to be able to see these 3 beings as divine and as the authorities over what we need to do for ourselves right now in 2014. Does anyone have any questions or statements?
Yeah, I actually, I would say really do. You know, I always wanted to know a little bit more about Elijah Muhammad, and you know, I'm definitely not going to live down his legacy. You know, but you know, I just have a lot of people who always love to mention the whole Malcolm X and Elijah Muhammad incident. And I always tell people that they'll say that despite what happened, this is a guy who actually had a program of, and I don't know how these brothers got in there. He may send them in there, he may didn't, but one time you said that if Islam was a jailhouse religion, but we can kind of owe that to the Nation of Islam for actually sending brothers. I like to say sending brothers up in there, and actually educate them, and look at Malcolm X, and like I said, we could say that story for another deal because I do really want to know the whole story just to inform people on the truth. But like you said, your teacher told you that Malcolm X was a pimp. To me, it's amazing how a person can actually go from being a pimp into one of the most influenced black leaders of all time. I mean, this guy right here was educated up in jail and came out and had a true change. To me, this is what rehabilitation really means. It's not to go up there, go in there and come out more crazier. It's actually to get educated and come out as a better person. Now, look at him. He is very respected because years ago, Malcolm X was not talked about as positive as he is today. See, a lot of people in the main media is kind of cutting him some slack, but years ago, you couldn't talk about Malcolm X in a positive way. He was like damn near a black revolutionist, and he still is. But I guess now they're trying to dumb him down. But I always wanted to know a little bit more of what Elijah Muhammad did for the black community, as for organizations, and what he has taught, and all those remnants, are they still here in a major way?
Right. No, you're right. Islam is known as a jailhouse religion. That's fine. I think that at the end of the day, if you can get something like that educates you, that takes you to another level, then that's beautiful. You got to realize that we're going through serious situations, in prison that's, meant for us to die and not meant for us to read, because most of the time, 90% of the prisoners that is in prison now, they don't have any motivation. They don't have anything. They don't educate themselves, and they coming from an animalistic state that they were oppressed into. So they're not going to think in terms of, man, I got to educate myself. A lot of times you're tapped by somebody to read a book, and that helps you. You come out of prison to liberate yourself and other people, and your people. That's a blessing. So I would never say, we make the statement jailhouse religion. That's, I've said that before, but at the same time, that's something that is, at the end of the day, you're helping your own and you help yourself more than anything. It's people can try to blame, Elijah for what happened to Malcolm. I don't. I think that was more CIA than anything. I think that was CIA backed. In my personal point of view, I don't think that had anything to do with him. I think they used people from the Nation of Islam as a cloak to take it away from the CIA, because they can say, well, you can't prove it because you got, Nation of Islam and their blacks killing them in themselves. So that can alleviate the enemy from guilt or alleviate the enemy from even any form of blame. So that's a serious situation. We got to take into a fact of, again, the main point of this is to be the authority over what our children will learn about ourselves. We can't allow our children to be educated by the oppressor. You can't allow someone who kidnapped you to read you a book. That's ridiculous. Like, are you kidding me? You're trying to get free. I'm trying to get free from captivity so I can educate myself. I don't want to sit here with this person while they're raping me and reading to me at the same time. That's ridiculous. But we continue that same cycle that we're not trying to change, and that's a sick mindset that we've adopted through oppression in this society. Anyone have any more statements?
Yeah, I got something to say. I do something regarding the three men, your father, Elijah, and Marcus. One thing I noticed about that, before you even said this as a topic, something I just thought about in my own head a long time ago. I said, man, those three brothers, they are examples of nation building. And
Right.
if I'm just saying, I'm not saying you got to do it or I have to do it. I'm just saying it as a thought. Like, if someone was to write a book about nation building, those three brothers would have to be at the very top of the list, because Marcus Garvey, I mean, you stated the facts already. Marcus Garvey had 15 million, and we're talking about in the 20s. And then Elijah, what he did, I mean, one thing, I mean, you didn't say, but you know it, everybody know it, he created jobs for a whole lot of people, Elijah Muhammad. And your father was the same thing, him doing that land out there. I mean, no one has really done that here in this land mass. And I just, that's just a comment that I mean, as far as nation building, those three gentlemen, elders, they have to be at the top of the list. And that's all I got to say. It's just amazing the accomplishments that they have all done. And I believe in sometimes it's like a hill, where as far as talking about black culture, it goes up and down. But I believe we got to get back to that, back to the visions that they had. And stating the couple quotes that you mentioned under the philosophies and opinions of Marcus Garvey, some of the words may be dated, but the substance is definitely still needs to be done and took into today.
Right.
We agree.
100%.
You know what? I agree too, because when you look at it, your father, Dr. York has mentioned most of his books. He has always gave credit to Marcus Garvey and Elijah Muhammad. A lot of people think during that certain time he has said a lot of things about religion, but he actually wrote a book I think on the great Elijah Muhammad, just talking about some of the good and not really bad things. That's like he was a bad person, but just certain mistakes, because every black leader has made mistakes. But when you look at it, that should, like on nation building, like you said, write a book on nation building. That's actually the best order you can do. I mean, look at Marcus. Marcus organized 20 million black people across the world into an organization. Same thing with Elijah Muhammad, and despite what he started communities. And communities, as he blossomed into something big, even though nobody wants to talk about it, but it proves one thing, that throughout the turn of the century, at any point of time, that it was possible. It was possible for having communities like that in the 1920s. It was possible for having communities like that in the 1970s, and it was still possible in the communities around 2000. So it lets you know that even today, communities like that can still strive and go ahead on. I mean, a lot of people don't know that just because, our situation, it doesn't mean that we still can't, in my way, saying build a new Tamaray, because guess what? There's land in different parts of the country that we can actually buy. It doesn't have to be as big as Tamaray, but think about lands that's half as big as Tamaray in multiple different cities or multiple different states. This right here can actually build us up and actually have a good trading system going on. That's like if, let's say, if something we need here in Houston that we have a hard time getting our hands on or may cost too much, over there in Georgia it may be more cheaper. Or we need help over here to build this nation up here. We may need to send some brothers down there to actually help build it or run it. I mean, there's still ways that we can still get this up for, and I'm glad we're talking about reparations and everything else, but I think the main thing is we definitely need to get down and have a meet and actually do it. I mean, my whole thing is this: we can never say it's going to fail unless we do it. We always point out the flaws, but I think that we need to get our feet on the ground and actually have a community. So where we don't have to worry about leaving our community, going to the white man's stores or people who don't want to trade with us. We need to start trading with ourselves. And, I think that's the only problem about black folks. We have one of the best speeches in the whole world, but the problem is we never want to practice what we preach. And I recently heard this statement, which was to me was kind of funny, but it's really true. Somebody said, if you want to learn how to do something, ask a black guy, but if you want something done, get a Mexican to do it. At one point in time, it was ask a black guy and get a black guy to do something, because we definitely knew how to nation build. And the problem is that's something that I'm afraid that we're losing real quick. We're really becoming too damn dependable. And what Marcus Garvey said, this problem of us being dependable on on a society is really becoming a big deal. I mean, we're still getting killed out here, and we still wondering what time our Social Security checks is going to come. I'm like, I used to always tell brothers, do you really want to depend on their system for the rest of their life, knowing their system's not going to last that long? What's going to happen when their checks don't come? What are you going to do? You're going to start stealing, robbing, or are you just going to die? You know, either way of how it goes, you need to start coming together, at least with brothers on the same conscious mindset, because I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. Eventually, people will start seeing us, and they'll start coming. And like you said, we can't save everybody, but we'll save the ones that we need. That's what Dr. York was talking about, the 144,000. Not a specific number, but a specific minded people.
Yeah, 144,000 is a very small number, man, compared to how many Africans all over the world. It's a very minute. You know, like the brother said, nation building is their examples. And then my father's biggest thing was nation building. He built nations of people. He built, realize, just think about it from this standpoint. When we went out and propagated from Asaru to wu-nuwaupu, and we went out and we sold books in the streets, these people who went out and sold books in the streets that was coming from the community imagine what they would be doing if they were not doing that. They would either be homeless or they would be doing something very heinous. He put to work criminals. Same thing with Elijah Muhammad. He put people in job placements. He put people in jobs that they can take care of their families. My father, the same thing. He put people in situations where they can take care of their families. They could feed their family. They could feed their wife and their kids, whereas no one's doing that anymore. There's no group of people there's no black organization that is that powerful. You got to realize he took everything a step further. Every black leader who came out took it a step further than the next. There's nobody out right now that's going to take what my father did and take it that, because he had 476 acres of land that was growing crops, it was growing, vegetables, fruits. We were self-sustained for a very long time, very self-sustained and self-sufficient. It's a nation of black people that didn't have to leave the land for nothing. I mean, I lived on that land for 2 years of my life, and at least 9 months at a point, it was months where I didn't have to leave for anything. Nothing. There was no dependency upon the European at all. Imagine that mindset. Imagine being able to not have to leave something that you own and that you control, and you could be amongst black people thinking like you ain't no fights going on, there's no police sirens, there's clean air, all these things. It's very unimaginable to us in America because, of course, we may have never experienced it, but we being fed so many things, about us and about what's going on, that it just seems like something that can never happen. But my father made a lot of things come true. He made things that would seem impossible for black people to do, was supposed to be career or life second-class citizens. Nation building on a large scale starts with economics, man. If you don't have an economic base, you have nothing. And all three men had an economic base, especially my father, man. This isn't a biased perspective. This is what I'm seeing from what I saw from an wu-nuwaupu perspective, And we can't forget these things. We have to. I have no problem writing a book and highlighting the things that all three men did, from my own research, because that needed to be known. Because again, they could erase what we've done from the memory of our kids, and they're starting to do that right now. And we have to take control, even from the Noble Drew of the world to the Clarence 13X, to again Malcolm X, to just brothers like that. The Yahweh Ben Yahweh, the Ben Amin Carters, all these brothers that they want to try to erase, the Deuce Ali's of the world. They're trying to erase these people from our minds and trying to make them just look like they're just cult members. And they've made black people look at cult members as just David Koresh and Jim Jones. So when you hear cult member, that automatically alleviates them, because
Yeah, I realize, man, J. Edgar Hoover called, the UNIA cult. He called Nation of Islam a cult, and they called us a cult. I mean, what is that having? But you mean to tell me a cult is something that for black people, when they call black organizations cults, they were really for upliftment. But we believed everything that they tell us, so automatically we didn't see them as a help but a hindrance. We gotta, I want to leave with this because we have to look at them as examples of what we can do for ourselves. We have to, even if it's small numbers of people, that all we got to do is just say, look, economically, man, when are we going to take control? When is it going to be? We can't wait. We can't pray on it. We got to just put our hands together and get it done. It's the bottom line, man. Bottom line. But I want to leave. This was a long one, but I wanted to really get this information out to people. And I want to say peace to everybody that got on. Peace and blessings. And Wadu.